so almost half of you are already familiar with Rabbi Aaron. And the way I see, Rabbi Aaron's role here today. Shalom, our second speaker, Oren Prihar. So, when I learned with Rabbi Aaron, really he had a profound impact on me. And even though he rarely likes to talk about politics, he certainly had a profound effect on how I view politics and how I view the conflict and how I view the situation here. And really opened my eyes to the possibility of solutions where Jews and Palestinians can both win together. I don't want to spoil too much or give too much away, but I'm really hoping that a lot of you have some of the same experiences that I had studying with Rabbi Aaron, and hopefully this will serve as a great introduction to what Oren's going to speak about at 10 o'clock. So without further ado, I'm going to let... We do have the sources.
So, should we start?
Yeah.
Okay, Boker Tov. This is a nice room, no? It's like you're in the Knesset or something. Never knew what they do in this building. I think this building was built for Europe, because I don't know what else is going on in here. Okay, well, Boker Tov. I know we're waiting for a couple more people, so I'll start with a joke. If they missed the joke, it's all people remember what I say in my joke. But there's this cute joke about a new rabbi in a shul, a young guy, and it's his first time they're davening, and they're getting to the Shema, and half the congregation stands up and starts yelling at the other half, "Get up!" And the other half starts screaming, "No, sit down, sit down." And they say, "It's the Shema, you have to stand." No, it's the Shema, you have to sit. And the rabbi was flabbergasted, never saw anything like this before. Well, then it gets to Marav, the same thing happens, right? There's the standers and there's the sitters, they start yelling at each other. And so the rabbi goes to one of the older congregants and says, what is going on here? He said, well, there's a machlokes, there's a dispute here in this shul, and some hold that when it comes to the Shema, you're supposed to stand, and others hold that when it comes to the Shema, you're supposed to sit. And he said, well, what is the minhag of the shul? And the guy says, well, I don't know. He said, well, how can we find out? Is there any founding members to the shul? He says, there's really only one founding member still alive, and there's only one founding member still alive. There we go. And he's in a Moshev Skanim. He's in an elder home. So they went to the Mr. Schwartz, and they asked Mr. Schwartz, the rabbi brought a delegate for the standards and another guy that represented the sitters, and they said to Mr. Schwartz, the standard presented his position. He said, isn't it true, Mr. Schwartz, that we stand in the shul when we say the Shema? And Mr. Schwartz says, no, that was not our tradition. Aha, says the sitter. He says, so then the tradition is to sit when we say the Shema. And Mr. Schwartz says, no, that was not our tradition. So Rabbi says, Mr. Schwartz, I need your help here. Every day they scream at each other. He says, that was our tradition. So our tradition is a very unusual tradition because our tradition is full of machlokes. And I don't think there's any other religion, but I don't know all the religions, that sanctify machloket, right? And that their central body of sacred teachings, in our case is the Gemara, is really the documentation of machloket. In fact, to be a Jew, you got to be a machloket, right? But the question is machloket b'di'evid? Is machloket just b'di'evid? Or actually, maybe machloket was lechatchila all along. Most people think that machloket in Am Yisrael is because somehow our tradition got lost, and we didn't quite understand, and we missed certain things, and so over time we started, arguing. But I want to present to you a different position on that, and I call this Hagion, הקודש. Okay? So we're going to start Hagion HaKodesh, not number 2, number 1. Doesn't say number 1. Mar Rabbi Abba Amar Shmuel. Actually, not Mar, it's just said Amar. I knew that didn't make sense. Amar, Mr. Rabbi. And that was Amar Rabbi Abba Amar Shmuel. Shalosh shanim nichlekeu Beit Shammai Beit Hillel, halo omrim halacha kemotenu, halo omrim halacha kemotenu. Yatza Batko v'amra elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. It's very famous and very difficult. Most people don't get this. How is it elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim? How can these and those be the living words of the words of the living God? V'halacha kebeit Hillel. The halacha goes according to Hillel. Why? Ki ma'achar she'elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim nidnei zachu Beit Hillel likva halacha kamotam. So that's true. If these and those are the words of the living God, then why would it be that the halacha would be like Hillel? Midnei shenochim v'aluvim hayu. Because they were pleasant. And aluvim means they took criticism well. Right? Vishonim divreim v'divrei Beit Shammai. And you know what? When they would state their opinion, they would also state the opinion of Shammai. V'lo od, not only that, they used to say Beit Shammai's position even before their own. This is a very disturbing Gemara. Can you tell me what's strange about this? Yeah, what's strange? Racheli. Yeah.
It seems to imply that the decision wasn't made based on what's the correct answer, but rather who had the actual truth, but rather who's nicer about it.
Exactly. Racheli gets it, right? This is not Jewish sounding at all. I thought we're about emes, right? Or the position of logic that somehow Hillel presented things more logically, but that he's a nicer guy. What does that have to do with halacha being a nicer guy, right? But that's what it says because Beit Shammai were nicer and they didn't take criticism harshly. And not only that, they would state the other person's position, which is, very menschlichkeit, thing to do. And not only that, they would state their opponent's opinion before their own. Wow, that's really nice. And for that reason, they're going to win this machlokas. That just doesn't sound right at all. Okay? So we're going to hold on to that. We're going to look at a number of sources, hopefully disturb ourselves, and then we'll try and get an answer. That's the job of the rabbi. First, the rabbi tries to disturb you, and then he tries to impress you with his brilliant answer. Okay? So I'm going to try and disturb you as much as I can. Okay. I hope the answer will be brilliant. Number 2. Chiddushei Ritba. Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. Shalu Rabbanei Tzalfat. Ha'ich efshar shiyu shneim divrei Elohim chayim. V'zeh oser v'zeh matir. It's not possible. How can they both be right? Right? V'tirtzu kishala Moshe l'maron l'kabel Torah. Herulo et kol devar v'devar mem tet. Panim lisur mem tet panim leter. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim, he was shown 49 reasons why something is asur, and 49 reasons why something is mutar. So which one is it? V'shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the answer. He asked the Kadosh Baruch Hu, what do I do with this? V'amar she'yezeh moseh l'chachmei Yisrael, she'b'chol dar v'dar, this will be in the hands of the Chachamim to decide which one. What? What does it mean? Right? Is this animal kosher or not? Well, there are 49 reasons it's kosher, and there's 49 reasons it's not kosher, and Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know what to do with this, and he says, well, the Chachamim will decide. V'yeh hachrab k'motam, they'll decide, v'nachon hu lefi hadrash, u'b'derech ha'emet yesh tam v'sod b'devar. That sounds like, okay, Hashem said, well, you guys have to figure this out. No, but there's a secret behind this. Number 3, kol machloket shehi l'shem shemayim sofa litkayem. This is pretty familiar, I think you've all heard this one before, that all machloket that is for the sake of Shemayim, sofa litkayem, in the end will be sustained. V'she'einu Shemayim, when it's not for the right intention for Shem Shemayim, ein sofa litkayem, then it will not be sustained. Ezi machloket shehu l'shem Shemayim, ze machloket Hillel v'Shamai, v'she'einu Shem Shemayim, ze machloket Korach v'kol edato. Again, what is disturbing about this? Most people don't read this carefully. There's something that is makes no sense here in the normative way that we read things. What doesn't make any sense? Other than Rachel. Yeah, what's your name?
Elon.
Elon, yeah.
Well, this is just addressing the Machlokes L'Shem Shamayim. It seemed like, at least to me, that would keep going on and on forever because, like, you try to force your opinion, even never mind. I tried.
No, you're right. You're getting there. You know that game? Say cham. You know, cham. Well, not Rachel. Yeah. What's your name? Ne'ima. That's my daughter's name. You have to get another one. Okay.
It seems that like a machlok between Hillel and Shammai, they have an answer, but Korach, like, we still have like issues of like people going like the type of machlok that Korach has, like things like that come up in every generation. But like a machlok between Hillel and Shammai, they figure out which one to go by.
So you're saying that the machloket of Korach seems to continue.
Yeah, but machlok between Hillel
Seems to be resolved.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Good question. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. What's your name?
Talia.
Talia.
I mean, I think it just goes back to what Rachel was saying, like, just because it's Machlokes L'Shem Shamayim doesn't help you understand what the truth really is. Like, this doesn't help us to, like, figure it out further. You just because, like, this
Yeah,
just
well,
is...
that's not what it's saying, though. It's saying that when something's L'Shem Shamayim, it will never be resolved.
Right.
It'll be sustained.
But I
And
think-
what is our intuitive saying to that?
That's less.
It should be the opposite. If it was L'Shem Shamayim, if these people really care about the truth, then eventually it should be resolved. And people who don't really care about the truth, like Korach, was about his ego. It was about power, right? So you think a machloket that's not L'Shem Shamayim, but L'Shem Shemi, it's for my name's sake, that would eventually be resolved because the truth, Mashiach will come and the truth will reign supreme. But here it seems to be the opposite. So what it's basically saying here is that when something's L'Shem Shamayim, it will always be a machloket. And that the machloket is lechatchila. It's not b'di'evid. It's lechatchila. And when something's not L'Shem Shamayim, well then eventually it will be resolved because it wasn't in the name of truth. Because when something's in the name of truth, there will always be two sides. Right? We'll have to understand that better soon. You wanted to say something? What's your name?
Rachel.
Yeah.
Just like I feel like that enables the tradition to stay alive because like if people are still like arguing about it in the future, then it means they still care about it. Whereas like if it's like got a definitive answer, then like people might lose interest.
Okay, but you're talking from a practical point of view, and I appreciate that. This is saying something even more revolutionary, which is we actually like machloket. It's actually the most honest way of clarifying the truth and defining the truth. And when something's L'Shem Shamayim, when I'm really grounded in wanting to bring the higher truth into the world, what is L'Shem Shamayim? The truth that you see from above. When you see things from above, you see it all in one glance. Okay? That there was actually machloket is not b'di'evid. It's l'chatchila, and that's why Rabbi Yehuda's brought me in here because he'd have a machloket. And I'm just joking, but because the machloket between ourselves and others is not simple. It's not simple. Oh, they're all wrong. Anybody who doesn't think like me is wrong. But what I want you to understand is you want people to think not like you. You need people to think not like you, and we'll explain that soon. Yeah, I saw a hand coming. Yeah, what's your name?
Zachary. What's car? I have people here for me.
Well, which one would you like?
Whichever one you
It sounds like a machlokas.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
But at the same time as what these sources saying so far, we have another Gemara that also says, everything was nice and fine with the Sanhedrin, and then Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai came and ruined everything. So
That's a pashut. Let's look at more sources. Okay. Let's look at more sources, okay? But I thank you for bringing that up. Let's look at more sources. Let's look at the Maharal. Don't ask yourself, how is it possible that two opposites can be established, can be sustained? שאין זה קשה, not a problem. כי אף אם תתפתל המחלוקת מצד שעמדו בני אדם על הדעות ופסקו הלכה כאחד מן הדעות. אין זה בכלל שאין סופו להתקיים, כי השם יתברך לא ביטל מחלוקת זה. Don't say that even though in the end there was a הכרעה, there was a decision halachically, that the מחלוקת ended. The מחלוקת did not end. כי פירוש אין סופו להתקיים, רוצים לומר שאין סופו להתקיים מן השם יתברך. ומחלוקת בית שם ובית הלל, אף אגב שיצא בת קול הלכה כבית הלל, לא היה הבת קול מבטל מחלוקת. When the bat kol came out and said the halacha is like Hillel, it wasn't coming to mevatel, to nullify the machloket. Mipnei shesanuim machloket, because Hashem doesn't like machloket. Ki ahuv ve'ahuv haya machloket hazeh. Hashem loved and loved the machloket. Hashem loves machloket. So why did the bat kol come? Not to mevatel machloket, but halachically, you got to do something. Halachically, you can't do two things different. So in our world of asiyah, we have to take one position, in actuality, in deed, but in thought. They're not only both relevant, they are both necessary. And they both need each other. And actually the bat kol came to enforce that machloket by saying that this is actually two sides. And they're both the living God words. So there's nothing wrong with the machlokes. There's actually everything right about the machlokes. Just practically, what do we do in the meantime? And so it's important to understand that, okay, the Shammai boys have to feel like we lost because halacha is now like Hillel? No. In the meantime, we're going to go like Hillel. Eventually, we'll go like Shammai. But from the Emet point of view, they're both right. How could they both be right? You see, this is the challenge over here. The challenge is that we have a way of thinking that we're so sure is right that what I'm going to share with you is going to sound pretty nonsensical. And it sounded nonsensical to me when I first happened upon these ideas. And so it might take a little while to digest this, but it all goes back to the influence of the Greeks. So this is very apropos to be talking about this Hanukkah, because really the Machlokes and Hanukkah is very much this. This is really at the very core of what's really going on between us and Yavan. What is the core? The core is the way Aristotle presented logic, and it became so embraced by much of mankind, well, not all of mankind, especially Western minds, that what he says seems so pashut that you wonder why he has to say it, right? But when he said it, I guess it wasn't so pashut, and then it became pashut. This is what he says. So here we've got Aristotle's 3 classic laws of thought. There's what's called the law of identity, which is A is A. Sounds simple, right? The law of contradiction, A is not non-A. Right? A can't be non-A. Black can't be white. Right? Up can't be down. So that makes sense. Right? One can't be many. So A is not non-A. And then what he called the law of the excluded middle, A cannot be A and non-A, neither A or non-A. In other words, A can't be itself and not itself at the same time. Does that seem simple? Pashut, no? You wonder why a guy like Aristotle had to say that. Well, I guess it wasn't so pashut in his time. And this is what he says. It is impossible for the same thing at the same time to belong and not to belong to the same thing in the same respect. This, then, is the most certain of all principles. And it seems to be certain to all of us because our minds think this way, and we can't even imagine to think in any other way. In other words, this is just a summary of what he just said. In other words, for any proposition, either the proposition is true or its negation is true. When there are two contradictory propositions where one proposition is the negation of the other, one must be true, the other false. Pashut, right? It is impossible that there should be anything between the two parts of a contradiction. That's basically Aristotle. Yeah.
Okay, two things.
What's your name?
I'm Serena.
Serena.
Yeah. I feel like what we just read, like about Aristotle, kind of contradicts the fourth source in that it's saying that you can't have, like,
It does
you can't have
contradict
a
first.
gray. Like, you can't
Exactly.
have a
That's
gray
our
area.
point here.
So then, if
The
that's
Maharal
the case,
is not so green.
so then if that's the case with like the fourth source, when it's saying like you can do one thing, like you can go with one school of thought in practice, but like think the other, or maybe think both. I feel like that's just too much to ask of a person, because if you're practicing something physically, either you'll come to believe it, or because you're believing something else, you'll come to resent it.
Okay, let's hold off. That's a good point. But let's try and understand better what is the difference between what we're going to call Hagion Kodesh and what Aristotle would call Aristotle classical logic. Okay, so we're not trying to convince anybody anything. By the way, you don't have to accept anything I say. You know, if you don't, you're wrong. I don't care. I'm just joking. But that's not my position. I show you sources. You can decide what you want to do with it, right? And generally, it's something you need to digest. There are ideas I heard from my rabbis, and literally took me between 3 to 6 years to understand what they actually said. And then when it finally hit me, it was terrible. I was sitting there in the classroom for 6 years. I was hungry and I didn't know what to do. It took literally, I went to different rabbis. There were things that I learned through Kabbalah and the teachings of Rabbi David. There were many, many years before I really was able to. So one of the challenges of these ideas is that this is not difficult at all. This is so simple, that's why it's difficult. The reason why this could be difficult for some people is it's different. Our minds are used to thinking in a certain way, and we don't like hearing things that are very, very different. So we start to resist it. So a very important thing when you learn anything is focus on understanding and not judging it. Okay? You can judge it afterwards, but you can't do both at the same time. You can't listen and judge at the same time. Just listen as if you've never heard anything in your life before. Hear the idea, and then you got your whole life to judge it. Okay? And the good thing about it, I won't be around to feel judged. But the idea basically is just focus on listening, and don't judge the idea. It's not, right now is not time to say, do I accept this or not? First, what is it? And then you can think about whether you want to accept it or not. So let's work, let's work on that.
Would we like to say that the fact that Aristotle said these things means that before he said it, as in around a time when these things were being thought about by the Jewish Gedolim, where it wasn't obvious, it wasn't like the mainstream, I think.
And not in the Jewish world, but I don't know what Greeks were thinking until then. I don't know. But what I do know is what Aristotle presented has become the normative mindset. That anybody that would suggest anything different would be considered to be out of their mind. Okay? And this is really the problem, that most of us are learning Torah with Western minds. Right? We are applying Aristotle's logic to understanding our own tradition, when what we need to do is go back to the original mindset of the Jewish people to understand our texts. This is messing us up big time, right? Big time. I believe that, and this is also Christianity. Christianity is very dualistic in its way of thinking. Either body or soul, it's either state or church, but either or, right? And I believe assimilation is much more serious than just Jews assimilating into a non-Jewish world and marrying non-Jews. It's non-Jewish thinking assimilating into the Jewish mind. Right? And this is going to take a long time to get out. Okay? So, what is Hagion Kodesh? These are just my notes here. we're going to call Hagion HaKodesh paradoxical logic. Now, paradoxical logic is not unique to the Jewish people. You can check out Harav Hugel, and you'll find paradoxical logic is actually quite prevalent in Eastern tradition also. That's why I personally have more respect for Eastern traditions than Western traditions, even though I'm still not a Buddhist, but you will see certain commonalities between Jewish thinking and Buddhist thinking, and it makes sense that you have a lot of Jews that are very drawn to Buddhism, right? Apparently, 2/3 of the Buddhist movement in America are Jewish, and they call themselves Boo Jews. These are Jews that go around scaring people, I guess. I don't know, but they call themselves Boo Jews, and a lot of the major figures in the Buddhist movement in America are actually Jewish people. I think it's because there's something about their neshama, the Jewish soul, that is being drawn to a kind of logic that they assume is not Jewish, when in fact it actually is very Jewish. Okay, but what are you going to do? So Hagion HaKodesh, on the other hand, states that A is A and not A. Opposites do not exclude each other, rather arise simultaneously. Aristotelian logic has become the habit of our thinking and seems natural and self-evident, while paradoxical logic seems nonsensical. That A is A and non-A. Not one is one. Okay, and that's really what you're saying when you say the Shema. Okay, and we're going to see that in a second. Look at Ar P'lei Torah. Ar P'lei Torah is the writings of Rav Kook. It's a very wonderful book. All his books are amazing. And I've been very influenced by the teachings of Rav Kook. This particular sefer is Rav Kook's notes after he would daven. So after davening, apparently during davening he had these downloads. And he just had a little machberet, and he would write what came to him after davening. So it's not in any particular order. It's really amazing pieces in there. Don't be disturbed by the gathering together of opposites, kefiyah mifusam, as it is, well known that people are uncomfortable with opposites. So somebody's got to win here. Somebody's got to be wrong here. Because what seems to the public as dispute and opposites, it's only because of their narrow way of thinking that they actually think these are opposites and exclusive, mutually exclusive. They're only seeing a very small part of the higher shleimut. And even the little part that they're seeing in a very distorted way. The people who have clear thinking, they're able to go to very expansive places, and they look for the good everywhere, and they unite everything in a complete oneness. What's he talking about here? You see, this is the point. Aristotle says that black cannot be white. Black is black. Black cannot be not black. Right? Black cannot be black and white. We actually say that's not true. Right? How's that not true? Because the truth is you don't have black without white. And therefore that means that white is part of the very definition of black. So that means that black actually is also white. Because white is essential for the very definition of black. That means included within the very identity of black is white. White is not white without black. That means included within the very definition of white is black. That means white is white and also not white. Because not white is what makes white white. Up cannot be up without down. Male cannot be male without female. The entire universe is built on duality that is not competing with each other, but completing each other. Look at on the bottom. The yin-yang symbol, I wish we could have taken, because this is the most beautiful symbol, right? What is really the yin-yang symbol on the bottom, that circle over here? What are they suggesting over here? You have this black that kind of morphs into the white, and then you have the white that kind of morphs into the black, and then in the black there's a white dot, and in the white there's a black dot. That's a symbol of non-dual thinking, or what we're going to call Hagion Kodesh. That really what the Eastern tradition was communicating with this symbol is that within black is white, and within white is black, and that they actually move into each other, never becoming each other. Right? And that is the machloket. Right? Let's go back to Hillel. They're arguing. Hillel says one thing, Shammai says another thing, and the halacha is like Hillel. And Racheli said it doesn't make sense because we don't posek halacha based on being a nicer guy. It wasn't because he was a nicer guy. It was because
the truth of the machlokas.
he recognized his logic, appreciated and understood that he wouldn't have a position without Shammai. Right? It wasn't that he was a nicer guy. It was actually that he had grasped more the logic behind it. And he would state Shammai's position also, not because he was being respectful. Why would he state Shammai's position? And then why would he state Shammai's position first? Not because he was being a nice guy.
Without Shammai's opinion, his opinion is not as meaningful.
Not only not meaningful,
It doesn't
it
exist.
doesn't
Yeah,
exist. You
can't
can't
have
have
it in a
right
vacuum.
without left. You know, you got all these righties that can't wait until all the lefties are gone. And you know what happened when all the lefties are gone? There won't be any righties. Right? There won't be any righties. You got all these people that are lobbying for black. And then all the people against them, no, white, white, white. They don't realize the reason why you're white is because they're black. And the reason why you're black is that they're white. And you actually need each other. Right? You actually need each other. And that's where we disagree with Aristotle. Aristotle says A cannot be non-A, and we say that's not true. A is A because there's a non-A, therefore non-A is part of A. Alright? Part of A. And you can't get rid of them, and that's why the machloket is love. So now, if a machloket is l'shem shemayim, it will be sustained. Why? It'll never go away. Right? If the blackies are going against the whiteys, and it's l'shem shemayim, then what's going to happen? There'll still be a machloket. Right? There has to be a machloket. Because we want there to be somebody that has the opposite opinion, because without them we don't have an opinion. If you don't have a different opinion than me, I don't even have an opinion. Right? That's why we love machlokes. And that's why the machloket isn't really a mistake. It's actually a deeper understanding of emes. And therefore, when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim, everything has a different side to it. Right? There's 49 reasons that it's kosher, and there's 49 reasons that it's not. And that's true. But what do we do with the halacha? Because we can't do both at the same time. Right? So in the meantime, we do this. Maybe eventually later we'll do that. But they're both valid opinions. Look at the part of this picture down here. This is a very famous picture that I think most people have seen. How many people here see a goblet? Put up your hand. Okay, how many people here see two faces? Put up their hands. Okay, how many people here see a latke? Okay, just checking. Just checking. Okay, the truth is this a picture of two faces, or is this a picture of a goblet? And the answer is yes. Right? And yet, sometimes you'll see the two faces, and sometimes you'll see the goblet. What happens Does the white become the background and the black becomes the figure? Or does the black become the background and the white becomes the figure? Right? But everything always has a ground and a figure. And that's what you gotta go figure. What's the ground? What's the figure? Okay? In other words, what's right? Is it a coin? Is it heads or is it tails? And the answer is, it's a coin. Right? Mark Twain once said, sometimes it wasn't a bad choice, it was poor imagination. Because there was a third choice you didn't even think of. And so people are arguing, it's heads, no, it's tail, it's heads, it's tail. The truth is, it's a coin, and it's beyond the either or. And it depends what side you are that you're seeing. Okay? And that's the interesting thing, that Hashem is put in the heads of Sfardim and Ashkenazim, Hasidim and Misnagdim, and the different poskim, how they're going to see it. Some people are going to see for what some psychological hardwiring, they're going to see the two faces, and the white becomes the background. And some people, their minds just naturally, for some reason, sees the black as the background, and the white becomes the figure. There's something about the way Hashem wires your mind that you see that side of the whole picture, that side of the coin. But you can't have heads without tail. This is something that quantum physics figured out, and quantum physics discovered a very new logic called quantum logic. And quantum logic goes against classical logic, Aristotelian logic, which messed up science for many, many years. Because science was looking at the world with Aristotle glasses, expecting that everything fits into the neat packaging of either or, of right or wrong. But what happened is, one experiment that they did in quantum physics is they took a polarized lens. Now, polarized lens is not just sunglasses, but it's polarized in that the structure of the glasses is solid, right? It's consistent. So they say that light, a beam of light, has within it diagonal beams, rays, horizontal rays, and vertical rays. Okay? Now, when you got, I don't know if they still have these Polaroid sunglasses. Do they still have Polaroid sunglasses? You guys heard of Polaroid sunglasses? Well, in my time, there was something called Polaroid sunglasses, which actually came with this little piece of plastic as a tag, so you could see how it works. And they would tell you to look at the light through the sunglasses, and then take this little tag and look through the tag and through the sunglasses at the light, and then turn the tag around, and what happened is the light would disappear. That was because they were both polarized lenses. Okay? So let's say you had a polarized lens that's polarized horizontally, right? And then you have this other polarized lens. So when you turn it, what would happen is you'd have vertical and horizontal, and that would cut out all the light. The light couldn't get through it. Because what happens is the reason why Polaroid lenses were great sunglasses, I don't know what happened to them, right, is that it would get rid of the glare. Because what it wasn't just simply colored glasses, but it would filter out some of the light. And so if it was horizontally polarized lenses, then what light would get through it? Only horizontal. You have to think of somebody walking with a broom, right? They can only get through the fence if you're horizontal, right, but not vertical. So what they did is they took these pieces, these three pieces of plastic, polarized lenses. Vertical, horizontal, diagonal. And they shoot light through it, okay? Well, what would happen is when it got to the horizontal, what would get through?
Vertical.
The horizontal. When it would hit the vertical, what would happen? It would get stopped and you'd see no light, okay? And if you put diagonal over here in front of them all, so diagonal would get through, but then what would happen? It would get stopped, right? But this is what happened. They put the diagonal in the middle, and suddenly there was light. Right? Suddenly there was light. Makes no sense. How's that possible? Horizontal gets through, gets stopped at diagonal, or at the very least we get stopped at vertical. But it didn't. And this is how they explain it. Diagonal light is horizontal and or vertical light. So diagonal light got through the horizontal because it's horizontal. It got through the diagonal because it's diagonal. And then suddenly, it was also vertical and got through vertical. This is a total nonsensical experiment, which is basically one of the experiments that shows that reality is not Aristotelian, right? It's paradoxical. And that paradoxical logic is the way the universe is actually functioning. There's another experiment that expresses the same idea. The experiment where they discovered that originally thought that light was, well actually, I don't know which one was original, but there were different experiments that demonstrated that light was a wave, and they did other experiments that demonstrated that light was a particle. Now that's not possible, right? Because a particle and a wave are mutually exclusive. So how did this happen? Well, the answer is light a particle or is light a wave? What do you think the answer is?
Yes.
It's beyond the either or. It's in its own category, but when we describe it, sometimes it appears to be a wave, and sometimes it appears to be a particle. How can it be both? It isn't both. It's beyond the either or. Okay? So what's happening is we're looking at reality, and our mind is distilling a shleimut, a non-duality, a echad, a true one, and that it gets filtered through our brains, it gets refracted like light breaking into a spectrum. And it seems to be that there are two opposites. But all of Judaism is based on this. When we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei correlates to divine transcendence, whereby the name Elohim correlates to the divine immanence. Is Hashem beyond us, or is Hashem within us? And the answer is yes, beyond the either or. Beyond the either or. Was Adam a male, or was Adam a female? And the answer is yes. He was beyond the either or. It's not even fair to call Adam Harishon a he. Okay? It was beyond the either or. And that's what Rav Kook was saying over here. The machloket, the Maharal is saying, the machloket is ahuv because the most accurate way to describe reality as it is in a paradoxical formula. Okay? And that's what Rav Kook was referring to when he said, biyachad biyichud shalim. When we do mitzvahs, we do something l'shem yuchud kutcha brichu v'shechinte for the sake of uniting kutcha brichu, the Holy One, with the Shekhinah, with the divine presence, which we don't have time to go into right now. You just have to know that they are opposites, right? B'yichida shalim, in an absolute oneness. So I remember I was in a library in Toronto. I was looking at the philosophy section, and I came upon anybody here from Toronto? Okay. So I came upon a Shita Mekubetzet of philosophy, right? This was a book that basically gathered together all the famous positions in history in philosophy. Is it physical? Is it spiritual? Is it mind? Is it matter? Is it free will? Or is it determinism? And then it had all the philosophers that said this, and all the philosophers that said that, and you know what we would say? Yes. Right? And so when you get to these things, called Safui v'Reshut Netuna, everything was foreseen, Hashem sees it all, and yet permission is being granted for free choice. How could there be free choice and determinism? Again, go back to the formula. There's no such thing as free choice if there was no such thing as determinism. Right? But you see, that's hard for us to believe. Just like when I said this thing is black, is not white. You imagine black. Wait a second. If there was black, it'd still be black. No, it wouldn't be understood as black. Right? So our minds are already kind of too late. We've seen white, we've seen black, and now we understand black. But if there was never white, then this would not be what we understand as black. So let's look at a couple more sources, and then we'll have 10 minutes for you can ask me questions. Yesh olam, number 7. Yesh olam shel chol v'olam shel kodesh, olamim shel chol v'olamim shel kodesh, olamim sotrim zeh et zeh. So what are we into? Are we into chol or are we into kodesh? See, this is a big mistake, and this is what I think turns off a lot of Jews. Because they see a lot of value in chol, in the secular. And yet, kodesh. And there's the people that are pushing, no, only kodesh, only kodesh, only kodesh, and then there's all the chilonim that say, no, chol. Kamuvon stira hi subjektivit. That's a Hebrew word. Okay? This stira is only subjective. There is no machloket between chol and kodesh. Adam basagata mitzumtzemet. Eino chol hasher bein kodesh ubein chol. He cannot compromise between them. He cannot negotiate between them. Bein chol hashvot et stirotam, and he cannot settle their contradiction. V'hein emnon yushavot b'hom olam. But in the higher place, there is no kodesh and chol. Just kodesh kodeshim. Rav Kook explains in another place that kodesh kodeshim, the holy of holies, is when you see how the kodesh and the chol are two sides of one coin. Okay? And that's what he says, mechon, the mechon kodesh kodeshim. Another midrash over here, mi yitain tahar mitamei lo echad. Kagon Avram miterach Hezkiah miachaz. This is a midrash that points out that Tahor comes out of Tameh. How did Avram come out of Terah? So now you have the answer. How could Tahor come out of Tameh? How could pure come out of the impure? How does pure come out of the impure? Not the yes answer. That was a good test. Not all the answers.
They
Yes.
depended on one another.
Not just dependent. They are rooted in each other. They emerge from each other. You can't have Tahor without Tameh, and you can't have Tameh without Tahor, and therefore going back to the yin and yang, which we're going to steal from the Buddhists and make it Jewish, right? Essentially, coming out of the black is white. Coming out of the white is black. Within the black is the essence of white. Within the white is the essence of black. And therefore this midrash shows how Olam Haba comes out of Olam Hazeh. You see, this goes back to the problem in the Jewish world where people became Aristotelian in their thinking. No, we don't like Olam Hazeh. Hey, it's just a lobby. It's just a prose door to get to Olam Haba. But what's really important is Olam Haba. I want you to know when you'll get to Olam Haba, real Olam Haba is Olam Haba and Olam